got carried away with my affair and my husband caught it in the worst way possible. You know I'm sharing this story because I can't forget about it and it keeps coming back. I love my husband so much and I hold him in very high regards, but I would never forget the pain he had put me through. I'm still in disbelief that my own husband would do me like that. I'm also not a saint. I have my fair share of flaws and I have done my husband wrong. I mean, we should have sat down as adults and discussed everything and not act irrational like he did at first. Please note that I will be using fake names to protect the involved parties and their privacy. My husband, Taylor Thompson, male 31, and I, female 29, at one of the children's homes in Pune, India. While I was volunteering to care for infants that were in the shelter, I love children, so that's why I decided to spend my day with them that day. Taylor came in and I was introduced to him as a sponsor of the children's home. He was actually doing a very nice job. I respect people who think of others and try to go an extra mile to help the ones who are in need. Taylor and I spent the day at the children's home until it was time for me to go. Mind you, I had requested an Uber ride the time I was going to the children's home since my car was away for a service. Taylor offered to give me a lift and I couldn't refuse because I was saving money. I was grateful for his kind gesture and gentleness. He took me to my apartment and told me that we would see each other the following week. Yes, I had promised the home that I would visit them again the following weekend. I enjoyed my stay with the children. We met the following week, of which was when we exchanged numbers. Well, he asked for my number so he could call me whenever he went to the home shelter. Since then, we communicated through phone and social media, specifically on WhatsApp. I couldn't stop thinking about him from the day he asked for my number. I mean, the guy was handsome, kind, humble, funny, and very resolute. I respect men like him because they always go an extra mile to love, care, and protect the ones who cannot defend themselves. He was the voice of the voiceless. Since then, we became friends. There's a lot that we had in common. Our goals and objectives clicked, you know. The energies and personalities clicked. Sometimes I would go to the home shelter hoping to see him, but sometimes I wouldn't see him, which was a bummer to me because I had hoped that he would show up. When I would ask him why he never came to the home shelter, he told me that he was busy at work but promised to visit the following weekend. A few months later, he asked to take me out on a date. He was so blunt and straightforward, and that added to the boxes that I was ticking about him. We went on that date and it was truly amazing. One thing about Taylor was that he had a great sense of humor. He knew how to show his true emotions, and he would communicate with what was bothering him or made him happy. He shared everything. I even doubted that the guy actually had secrets because of the way he was open. We started dating 3 months into our friendship, and it was truly a bliss. He would spoil me even if I didn't need anything. He would just randomly tell me to wear something nice and we would go out. I was the happiest woman on earth. I was treated like a queen, and I didn't know how it felt to be loved and treated like a queen before I met Taylor. I would say that Taylor was my first love and first everything. He taught me a lot about relationships, and I would Google some of the things that I couldn't ask him about dating and relationships. I learned a lot about it, and I was glad that I had a man who took it upon himself to help me gain more knowledge about men and relationships. I think 6 months, if not 7 to 9 months later, he proposed, and I immediately accepted his proposal. I said yes to the love of my life. 3 months later, we got married. It wasn't something big, just a few of his friends, colleagues, and our families. We had also invited a few of the staff members in the children's shelter. Taylor and I didn't stop visiting the children, and it would always be the funniest thing I had ever done and experienced. The fact that Taylor respected the relationship rules of honesty and respect. Well, I grew up in a foster home, so I don't really know if my parents are still alive or not. And it always saddens me that I had grown up in a foster home without any trace or names of my parents. It's like they had never existed, you know. But life has to move on, right? And besides, we can't always worry ourselves about people who never bothered to look for us, who actually forgot that they had or have children. That is why I always go and visit the children's center to offer my help. It's because I knew how it's like to have nobody and staying and growing up with total strangers. I vowed to give the orphans love, care, and support so that they won't feel abandoned and alone. Our house was full of happiness and love. Even our intimate moments were on another level. I was a happy woman. I lacked nothing. From love, happiness, handsome husband, beautiful home, and everything. But I don't really know what had come over me to destroy all of that good thing. So I had a male best friend that I had actually took as my brother. You know, Kristen and I were in a foster home together. By grace of God and his luck, he was adopted by some rich parents but later reunited with his father. So life was fortunate for him, and that was how we lost each other. But later reunited when we were both in university, I was so happy to get a chance to be united with Kristen again. Since then, we became inseparable. Taylor, my husband, had his own doubts about my friendship with Kristen, but I would always assure him that there was nothing more that was going on between us. It was just a purely brother and sister relationship. Not knowing that I was just fooling my mind and Taylor's mind, Kristen actually had his own thoughts about our friendship relationship. And it didn't end very well because I betrayed one person who was able to accept me into his world and heart and make me his without feeling insecure about it. And what did I do to appreciate that? I acted like a loose witch. I hate myself sometimes for what I did. I regret it. After a year of being married to Taylor, we started talking about having kids. Well, it was also my dream to have kids with Taylor, but I first wanted to boost my modeling career. So I asked if we would wait a little because at that time I had entered for Miss India competition. He had his career and life all figured out, and I also wanted that, you know. He had already had a legacy and inheritance, but I didn't. And when I told him my reason to that, he got angry, of which confused me because despite that, he wanted to start a family. And I wanted that too. But he didn't understand my reasons of wanting to wait maybe another year of starting a family. And I didn't understand why. I mean, what was the rush? It wasn't like I would be in the competition forever, you know. That modeling competition news was not sitting well with him. I don't know if it was maybe because I was working with Kristen most of the time since he was a photographer, so he was the one who would usually take pictures of me. I tried reasoning with him that modeling was what I love. It had started as more of a hobby, and I started loving it to a point that I had even thought of pursuing a career in the industry. Yes, I was working as a receptionist in one of the law firms in Pune, name withheld due to personal reasons, but it wasn't something I had dreamt to do for the rest of my life. So Taylor became distant and would sometimes not come back home. I didn't know if the reason why his behavior had changed towards me was because of me wanting to pursue my modeling career, or he had his own things that he was not telling. But I had put that aside because I trusted my husband, and I knew that he wouldn't do me dirty or do something that would destroy and jeopardize what we were trying to build. He loved me too much to put our relationship in jeopardy. But instead, I was the one who had put our relationship and marriage in the state where it is now. I wonder what really came over me. Over the next few days, tension grew between us. He became distant and cold, and it seemed like every conversation ended in an argument. We both knew that something had changed and it was tearing us apart. I had tried to come to terms with my wrong and tried to apologize for how I had approached the situation. But I didn't know what to say and where to start apologizing because I told him what I had thought I should tell him as my husband, of course. I thought he was going to be behind me and give me the support that I needed, but I guess I had counted chickens before they even hatched. I realized that my approach may not have been the best. Instead of having an open and honest conversation, I should have taken more time to understand my partner's feelings and concerns. Perhaps there were underlying issues that I had failed to address, which was why I had decided to think of another approach that he would understand. I didn't need him to do anything. I just wanted his support and love throughout the whole thing. I was in a phase where I needed my husband the most, but he chose to act like a teenager and a douchebag who wanted to control my dreams and future. I loved my husband. Heck, I even still love him so much. We had vowed to ourselves to always be open with one another. We believed that strong communication skills were a key to a successful marriage. Oh, and not to forget loyalty, respect, and commitment. But the way he was acting made me feel like going against his word and doing what made me happy and what I am passionate about. Taylor had broken the rule that we had made for ourselves to always listen to each other, support each other, and most importantly, respect each other. But he had failed to keep those promises. During the day as he was at work, I got the time to prepare some romantic dinner for the two of us. I wanted to soothe his heart first before dropping the same bomb that had angered him before. Later on, he came back and I was nervous. I didn't know how he was going to take my thoughts of entering for the Miss India competition, but I hoped for the best. I gave him water to bathe and prepared supper. I wanted everything to be perfect, you know. So when he came back from taking a bath, we had our meal over a light conversation. I knew that he had forgiven me for the first encounter when I dropped the bomb, but I had to do it again, unfortunately. So I started the conversation with the apology of how I had approached my plea to enter the modeling competition situation and how much I wanted us to speak about it without arguing or fighting. The more he looked at me, showing that he was listening, the more my armpits were sweating because of the nerves. My husband was a great husband and a partner to me. I didn't doubt his love for me because it was a sure case that he loved me so much. I told why I wanted to enter the competition. Well, more like reminding him because when we were on our dating and getting to know each other, we had spoken about our hopes and dreams. So I was taking him down memory lane. I wanted him to remember his words when he told me that he would support me in anything that I wanted to do. Or maybe he told me that when he wanted to soothe and win my heart. I didn't regret marrying Taylor. I mean, if I didn't want to get married to him. I would have rejected his proposal or asked him to wait a bit before we got married. When I agreed to be his wife, I knew what I was putting myself into, and it was a lifetime commitment. But on another thought, I felt like I had got married way too early and I was still young. I didn't give myself any chance to live, be myself, and a chance to pursue my dream career before committing myself to the lifetime union. I wanted to start living a carefree life. I didn't give myself a chance to be young and do young people things, but I rushed to get married. He asked if that was what I had wanted, and I agreed. To him, he thought I wanted to cheat on him. That was what came to his mind first. He didn't even give himself time to digest and think about everything that I had told him. He was too quick to jump into conclusion before giving me time to explain further to me. I didn't know if his problem was because I wanted to enter the modeling competition, or it was the fact that I would be working closely with Kristen, and I would be spending more time with him. I knew that my husband was a jealous and insecure person, but I didn't know that it was to that extent. I had expected him to be as understanding as my husband because he knew that modeling had been my dream, not being a damn receptionist at a law firm, but I never anticipated the level of anger he displayed. It was clear that he saw my dream and wished to enter the competition as a threat to our relationship. He got pretty angry to the point that I felt my cheek burning, only to find out that he had just slapped me. I couldn't believe it, you know. I looked at him with horrified eyes. My mind took its own time to register what had happened. One sunny weekend, Taylor came back home in the afternoon. Mind you, he had been gone for 3 days without even bothering to call me. I asked where he was coming from. The answer I got was, "I'm trying to pursue my career also just like you want to pursue yours. And since you don't want us to start a family." That response shook me because I didn't expect it from him. He was slowly going back to being his old short-tempered self. I wondered what had driven him back to that state that we had worked so hard to conquer, but I just let it slide and hoped that he would tell me when he was ready. During that time when my husband was busy acting up, I started spending more time with Kristen. Well, Kristen was what I can call a great time passer. He helped me pass time when my husband was super distant from me in our marriage. I was going through a lot, you know. I knew my husband loved me, but his behavior was stressing me out to a point that I would even find myself venting in Kristen. I know it was wrong of me to just put my marital problems out there or share them with a friend or an outsider, but I needed someone to vent to, and Kristen was there and available. Time passed, and I continued spending more time with Kristen up until Taylor saw that I was no longer staying at home for long. He figured that I was spending time with Kristen, so he asked why I was spending more time with Kristen. And the stupid Casey, myself, lied and told him that Kristen and I were preparing for the Miss India competition. So that was why I had been with Kristen most of the time as my photographer, of course. I knew he didn't believe me, but there was no evidence that showed that there was something going on between Kristen and I. But I knew that there was actually something going on between Kristen and me. I just couldn't tell my insecure and short-tempered husband that during the time when he was an absent husband to me. I had found solace in Kristen because he was there to listen to my venting sessions, and he was what I can call a shoulder to cry on. Time passed, and I continued with entering the competition with Kristen's help, of course. So when we were still busy preparing for the big competition, there was a politician that had approached Kristen and told him that he wanted a model to promote his political party since it was still new at that time. I think Kristen gave him my number because I received a call from the politician's assistant to schedule a meeting with me for the following day or in 2 days. Of course, I agreed to meet up with the politician. I mean, I really needed my modeling career to be out there, and maybe I would find myself modeling for other countries. 2 days later, I went to the meeting with Mr. Jim Robertson, fake name of the politician, and we spoke a lot about his campaign and how much he wants someone to promote his party, a model to be specific. He then asked me what other things he can do to gain more supporters and votes, so I told him my wishes and how I wanted to help the community and how much I wanted the sponsor for it. Since then, we exchanged numbers because he liked the idea of helping the children at an orphanage. He told me that we would talk on the phone, and I was more than happy to hear that. We communicated a lot through the phone, and we were slowly getting close. After some weeks, he actually sponsored my newfound NGO, and I couldn't be happier. He had once taken me to the orphanage that he was sponsoring, and I would say that the guy's work was truly amazing. One thing I loved about Jim was that he was so down to earth. The things he was doing for the people, he was doing them because he loved doing them, and he wasn't a social media person. So whatever that he was doing, yes, he was taking pictures with the children and their helpers or nurses, but you would never find even one picture of what he is doing on social media. He made me believe that if you want to help someone, make sure you help them with an open and cleansed heart. Never try and help someone, then take pictures of what you did and flaunt it all over the internet. I was really moved by his humbleness and determination to help others. Months later, we had become close. He was a good advisor. Whenever I would be either confused or in need of some guidance and advice, I knew that he was available for me no matter what. I knew that I had someone I could trust and be free to talk to him about anything, whether it was bothering me or making me happy. He used to help me brainstorm some problem-solving techniques for my NGO, and I really loved every minute that I would spend with him. You know when someone knows the real you within a few months of knowing each other? That was Jim. He knew me from inside and outside. The campaign was going well, and we were slowly but surely getting more supporters. Even though the campaigns had put my friendship with Kristen in a tough situation, while on the other hand, my husband was just, I don't know how I can explain it, but my marriage was slowly hanging on a very high cliff. My conversations with Jim were flowing. It was like we had known each other for a very long time. We had chemistry, you know. The connection was there. Well, time passed, Jim and I were getting too close. Even a small child could see that something was happening between us. Most of the time, we would do some video calls. Well, not just normal video calls, but those nasty and freaky video calls. I had thought that that man was just for me. Jim and I had the same desires, and we connected in a way that I can't even explain. Weeks passed. Jim and I had privately met twice, and to say I was taken by the guy's action would be an understatement. He was on top of this world. I'm not saying my husband didn't have action, but he was always busy or grumpy about the campaign that I was running for the politician, and I was not getting anything from him anymore except for his money and few kisses here and there, but it was seriously boring. I needed some intimacy, someone who would be able to take me to another planet and make me see the ninth cloud. Since Taylor wasn't there to help me with my desires, I used Jim for my satisfactions, just like the way he was using me for his campaign. The guy made sure that I was overly satisfied and I had reached my climax. That's how our affair started. Well, we started calling our thing an affair when we had seen each other for the third time, and both of us couldn't get enough of each other. I was so much into the moment to the point that I even lived a double life. I loved my husband a lot, but I loved what Jim was doing to me more. I'd been living a double life, sneaking around behind my husband's back with a man named Jim. Their affair had been going on for months, hidden beneath layers of lies and deceit. I knew that if Taylor was to find out, a lot would be destroyed and lost. I know what I did was really a selfish and greedy move, but my affair with Jim was only for intimacy and nothing more. Yes, there were feelings involved, but I couldn't love him just like I loved my husband. Jim and I, the way we were so careless, we didn't even think of the consequences of our actions. We were just caught in our own bubble of being intimate. I really loved how Jim was making me feel worthy of his time and attention. I know that Taylor was always at work because he wanted us to have a good life, and so that he would be able to take care of me without any struggles. My husband had been a boring bun, and it really affected our marriage because besides the fact that he was always absent, but the worst thing that had strained our marriage was the fact that he couldn't support me in my dreams. I had to get that support from other people. So one fateful day, as Eric and I were strolling through the park, we had just finished with the campaign photo shoot, so Jim had asked me to have lunch with him at the park. While we were lost in our own little world after we had our picnic lunch date kind of thing, we failed to notice my husband, Taylor, approaching from the opposite direction. As we turned a corner, there he was, standing right in front of us, his expression a mix of shock and betrayal. The shock on his face quickly turned into anger as he confronted us, feeling betrayed and hurt by my actions. The way he was so angry, well, even angry is a small word. He was enraged and unable to control his emotions. He lashed out at my affair, the politician, Jim, resulting in a physical altercation that left us all shaken and embarrassed. I didn't know what to do nor say. I knew that if I were to say something, I would say something wrong and it would anger him more. I tried separating him from Jim because he was attacking Jim and was hurting him so bad. People were looking at us like they were given a free show. It was so humiliating if you ask me. Taylor was so heartless, and the way he was angry, he wasn't stoppable. I tried to take him away from Jim, but he was just strong to a point that I even gained myself a fist unintentionally. When people saw that Taylor was doing too much to a guy, they interfered and separated Taylor from Jim. Jim was also fighting back, but Taylor was overpowering him. I didn't know the kind of power that Taylor had that day. I tried talking to him and told him that it wasn't what it looked like, every guilty person's statement, but he just glanced at me and told me that I would find him at home. Some people were even taking pictures and videos. It was just a mess. After the chaotic scene, we all went our separate ways, but the tension and guilt weighed heavily on my mind as I made my way back home. My mind kept wondering what was waiting for me at home, and I was kind of scared to go back home, especially when Taylor was still angry. As much as I was really scared to face Taylor, but I knew that I had to somehow, so I would get over it and move on. I had a hope that he would believe my lie and forgive me. I didn't want to lose my husband just because of a fling and desires, but I guess sometimes hopes are only meant to stay as hopes. As I entered our empty house, the reality of what had just transpired hit me like a ton of bricks. When I got home, I couldn't believe my eyes. I was met by smoke that was coming from the car garage. I really thought that maybe Taylor had done something to himself, so I rushed to where the smoke was coming from. When I reached the garage, I saw Taylor holding all my new clothes. Well, the clothes that were bought by his money, he was actually setting them on fire. I tried asking him to stop and somehow tried to take them off him, but he just slapped me and told me to go inside and take all my old rags and go out of his house. I couldn't believe what Taylor was really doing. Sure, I had done him wrong in the worst way possible, and what I did was really unforgivable, but he didn't have a right to do what he did. He may have attacked Jim, but he wasn't supposed to burn my clothes just because they were bought with his money. And to think that was not the worst thing that he had done. I really thought burning my clothes would be enough for him to satisfy his angry heart. Little did I know that the man of the house would actually do something bigger and more heartless than just burning my clothes. Okay, clothes are replaceable, but what he did while I was packing all my belongings, he took all my bank cards and broke them all into pieces. I also got angry because as much as I shouldn't have done what I did with Jim, but he was the main reason why I found myself lying in another man's chest. We argued a lot that day to a point that I even got physical with him. He was trying by all means to shield himself, but I was also in mixed emotions. I was angry, but at the same time I was truly heartbroken. So I took anything that was before me and threw it in him while throwing tantrums also, not caring if it hurts him or not. I respected Jim's wish of me moving out of the house, but to say I was heartbroken would be an understatement. I didn't know that my marriage would end so painfully. Yes, Taylor had not filed for a divorce, meaning we were still legally married, but we both knew that it was over. I had destroyed the most precious thing I had just because I wanted to pursue my dreams and also work with the politician to help with his campaign. I didn't know that agreeing to be the face of Jim's political party would actually be a curse in disguise. A few days later, I had stepped down in helping Jim with his campaign. I had actually given up with my dream of becoming a Miss India. The only thing that kept me going was the reception job, even though it also ended painfully. You know when something strikes you when you least expect and you are down and out. During those days when I was at work, 2 cops came to my workplace looking for me. At first, I didn't understand why cops would look for me in my workplace, but later my mind came back and Taylor's name popped up. I mean, I still love Taylor, so it would affect me also where he is involved. Little did I know that the cops were actually not coming to deliver any news, but they were there to make an arrest. Mind you, that time people were watching, some whispering in between themselves, some were taking videos. The cop that I couldn't recall his surname told me that I was arrested for fraud and corruption that I had done along with Mr. Jim Robertson. You know when you are extremely shocked, to a point that even your body just freezes. Mind goes blank, eyes stop blinking, mouth hanging. That was how I was when the cop told me that they were there to arrest me. Everything went back to normal when the other cop was handcuffing me. I couldn't understand. I asked myself, why would they accuse me of such? That part really ripped me apart. My world came crumbling down, hopes gone. 1 month later, I got out. But when I got out, I felt like I was just a walking zombie. My soul had died the moment I was thrown in that holding cell with other inmates like I was a thief. The judge released me on bail, and to tell the truth, I don't even know who paid for my bail. I tried asking, but I was never given any answer, while on another hand, Jim was denied bail. I didn't know that I was involved with the corruption and fraud of a politician. I missed Taylor so much, and I had realized that being away from him made me feel incomplete. My life was just F***********D up. Taylor had managed to ruin my life just because of an affair that I had with Jim. On another hand, Kristen just ghosted me and went AWOL. I had no one to vent to or ask help from. I was officially alone, broke and empty. I just didn't know how to recover from the whole thing. Taylor had hammered the last nail in my life. He had completely destroyed me and I had no comeback from it. I didn't even have any cash on me. I knew there and then that I had to go back home, my foster home. Yep, I got lucky and gained myself parents when I turned 20, and they showed me nothing but parental love. I called my mother, foster mom, and asked her to fetch me. Unfortunately, she wasn't around, but I was lucky enough because she sent me some cash that would take me from the police station to New Delhi, where my foster home is situated. My heart was so shattered, I even thought of doing the worst to myself, but I would think of my mother and how she would feel. My mother was really disappointed in me when she learnt about what had really happened between Taylor and I. She asked me once, but I told her lies. I just couldn't bring myself to tell her what had really happened to my marriage. I think she called Taylor and asked what had really happened between us because a day after I had told her the lies. She came to my room with rage written all over her face. She was super angry and disappointed. 2 weeks after I had been home, a postman had delivered an envelope on my doorstep and I just couldn't believe my eyes. I had hoped that maybe Taylor would come back to his senses since he hadn't sent the divorce papers. So he waited for weeks to send divorce papers after he had made sure that I was down and out. I was really shattered. I was depressed and prison didn't do justice to me. All I wanted was to disappear at least and go to a place where no one knows me. I spent months indoors and decided that it was time to move on. With my mother's help, of course, she got me help, a therapist that spent a lot of time trying to make me open up about my marriage troubles. It took her 2 weeks trying to make me open up, and I was really grateful for her patience. I eventually opened up and tried to let go of the past and focus on the future. In a moment of clarity, I knew I had to make things right and face the music for my actions. A few weeks later, I was slowly getting back to being my old self, and I was trying to pick up the pieces that had been broken. I knew that in order for me to move on, I had to start by forgiving myself and forgive Taylor. I know that I had done him wrong and I was really regretting my actions. I want to make peace with Taylor, but I don't know where to start. Till today, I'm trying to figure out how I can reach out to Taylor so I can have a civil conversation with him and make peace with everything. Please tell me what I should do. I need your opinions. I had done this to myself. My husband divorced me because he found out I had kissed 3 different guys in the club. I had made the worst mistake in my life and I didn't mean to. I was slightly drunk because my husband and I had a fight, and I went and kissed guys in the club. I didn't know he was going to find out, and I didn't know the revenge he would carry out on me before divorcing me would be drastic. I had made sure to hide my tracks, but he had somehow found out. I hadn't even meant to kiss the guys. I was just angry. I didn't expect everything to lead up to divorce. It was something I didn't plan. It was something I expected my husband to forgive me if he ever found out, irrespective of the fact that one of the guys I had kissed in the club was his friend. Wasn't he supposed to let bygones be bygones? Why did he have to carry out a revenge on me that I haven't still recovered from and divorce me? He knew fully well I didn't have any money apart from his, yet he took it away from me all because I smooched lips with some guys. Was that normal? I mean, all he could have done was warn me never to try it again, and we would have progressed with our marriage. I guessed he never truly loved me if he did that to me. That was the only true explanation. My husband never loved me because we were supposed to stand beside each other through thick and thin. I had suspected from the very beginning that he was just marrying me because of my father's money. Then the unexpected happened and he didn't see any use for me again. That was why he acted like that, because I kissed a few guys. I mean, what was even his problem? I had just kissed them. It's not as if we made out or I slept with any of them. LOL, and so what if I did? Did that give him the right to divorce me and discard me like we hadn't been married for 5 years? My name is Miranda and I'm 30 years old, but I look 21 still. I'm sure you all reading this can already tell I'm a spoiled brat. Yes, I am. My daddy paid my bills up until he died, God rest him. My husband's name is Kieran and he's 30 years old too, I think. I don't keep all that information in my head. I was married to this man for 5D*MN years and he decided to end my life like this. He actually ruined my life. As I was saying, we were married for 5. We dated for 1. I met him when I was bartending at one of the popular beer spots in Atlanta. This was before they fired me 2 weeks after I met my husband because their supply was going missing. No, I wasn't the one that was reducing their supply. I wasn't and am not a chronic drinker. Anyway, my husband walked into the bar one evening and took a good long appreciative look at me, and I knew right there that I was either going to get married to him or we were going to hook up. LOL, we hooked up first and got married after a year of dating. When we were dating, he saw all sides of me. He knew I was a chronic partier and a lazy bum and couldn't cook to save my life, but he still wanted me. Now, I figure out why he wanted me all those years ago. He wanted me for my money. Technically, it was my father's money, but potato, right? My husband had wanted to start a new tech company. My father had the funds. It's so obvious now why he accepted all my excesses and never bothered me about it while we were dating and in our first year of marriage. He had wanted to be in my father's good books. That's sly. Too bad he didn't get what he wanted because reality hit. As I was saying, my husband knew all of my bad habits and tolerated it. He had even sponsored them sometimes, taking me to parties, getting me the most expensive drinks. Basically, he pampered me just like my daddy had. I know you might be wondering why, if I was rich, why I had been working as a bartender. Well, because I wanted to experience working class life. I had tried college and it didn't go well. I had tried the corporate 9 to 5 and I had absolutely loathed it. So I decided to do something more to my lifestyle. Free drinks and hot men looking to hook up after my shift. That was the life. My father never questioned me. And by the time my husband and I had come around to dating, I had been fired from my job, LOL. Dating my husband was great because he never took me for granted. It is now clear to me why. He showered me with love and affection and respect. He didn't shout at me or question me or beat me. He absolutely adored me. So I saw no harm in doing forever with him when he proposed. I had done almost everything except marry and have kids. I wanted to try that, and if I didn't like it, my daddy would just snap his fingers and everything would go away, or so I thought. I was totally foolish. My husband and I got married in a grand wedding. There had been local celebrities present, and all my friends and exes were there gossiping about how lush my wedding was. Just how I liked it. My husband was handsome, of course. Not so much now that he became the villain in my reality. And everyone was jealous of what I had. My daddy had gone all out to give me the best. In case you're wondering, I am an only child and my mom died when she gave birth to me. I'm trying to emphasize just how much I meant to my dad. Our honeymoon was at Santorini, and after that my daddy flew us to Milan and then to the Maldives. It was marvelous, the whole experience and everything, but I didn't know my whole life was about to change. My daddy gave my husband the funds he needed to use and start his company, and my husband babied me. I didn't know it was because I was a means to an end, but I found out when my father died. Yes, my father died immediately. We came back from our honeymoon and the bank swooped in immediately. He had borrowed according to them and he needed to pay back his loan with his assets even though he was dead. This was how they swept up and took all my funds. The funds that were supposed to be mine, they had seized it all up and carted it away. This was how I became at my husband's mercy. It didn't even take up to 2 years, and my husband's attitude towards me changed. Apparently his business that my father had invested in began to do well, and he didn't need to suck up to anybody so he could finally treat me how he wanted to. Everything began from our 2nd year of marriage. I had to learn how to cook because that was the only way he would give me money. Do you know this man went so far as making me iron his work clothes? LOL, after burning about 3 of his expensive shirts, no one told him to hide his clothes from me. But in all these things I had endured. I had stayed at his side and didn't run away even though I wanted to so many times. I stopped most of my habits because I didn't want to lose my husband, seeing as he was my only source of income. I did everything he asked. I went to occasions with him and smiled at his side even though what I wanted to do was dance and forget my sorrows in the music. I obviously couldn't do that. My husband and I endured our excesses until I couldn't take it again after 5 years. He decided one day to bring his mother into our house. Can you imagine being policed by both a man and his mother? It was a terrible experience for me. Everything I did was a mistake. My husband's mother complained during dinner and how terrible my food was and it was only fit for dogs. That I was the reason her son was skinny and didn't look like he had life in him ever since he had married me. I didn't take it as anything because people said mean things all the time and my husband wasn't skinny. She was just trash talking. But the trash talk continued. She told me every time that I wasn't getting this right and this shouldn't go this way, and I needed to sit up if I was to have children in this life. One of the things I heard so often was how she didn't even understand why and how her Don had married me. This was someone that had invited all her friends to her son and I's wedding to brag about the quality of the wedding. Old witch. What had pushed me to the breaking point of going back to my old habits? My husband and his stupid wants. The cause of our quarrels this time was how I had to get a job, and how he couldn't be buying me the things I needed again because he wanted to begin saving for our future children. He hadn't even discussed this with me. He had just brought it up at dinner and his answer was final. Can you believe his audacity? Children? Who had said I wanted children? How had he gotten to that delusional conclusion? Men never understood, did they? Well, we got into a heated argument that night and I stormed out of the house. Guess where I had gone to clear my head? No, not the club. I'd gone to get a drink and clear my head because I couldn't be in that suffocating house with my husband's mother glaring at me like I didn't have complete eyes, and I was an abomination, and with my husband talking to me like I was a child. I was totally sick of it. Terribly sick of it. I couldn't call out my friends because they also had their own homes and kids to take care of and prepare for school the next day. So I went drinking by myself, and it was a big mistake that I went alone because I ran into my ex at the bar. Such a little world. My ex was unmarried and more handsome than I had ever seen him. But nothing happened between us that night. I was sure of that. Just that I spilled my guts to him about everything that happened in my marriage, and he took me to a club to go and dance away my problems. And it was an out-of-this-world experience. It felt good being back in my own body, my world where I could just dance and not let anything bother me. Anyway, my ex took me back home at 2 in the morning when the whole house was dark. But I had a feeling my husband's mother was watching me as I creeped back into the house. I sat on nails the next morning, but my husband didn't say anything. His mother hadn't ratted it out to my husband, which was unusual. There was something totally wrong with that, but I had tried not to provoke her because I didn't want her to rat me out. I didn't know she was planning something else. She didn't even play out the pretense for long. All it took was me not doing what she wanted, and my husband's mother ran straight to my husband. That evening, my husband descended on me during dinner and how I was frolicking with other men while I was married to him. You all needed to see my husband that day, like he was ready to beat my life out of my body. But he didn't touch me. I tried explaining, but he didn't believe me. He chose his mother's words over mine. I had told him that I had only gone to see one of my friends. I even added that he could call her. And we had a lot to drink, and I had stumbled into my ex in our street. I didn't know how I had come up with that lie so fast, but it was a waste. My husband didn't speak to me for 2 weeks, and his mother taunted me each time that a no-good waste of space and her son would be better off if he divorced me immediately and found someone homely to marry who would give him the children he wanted. I couldn't let that happen while I was alive, so I had done the only thing that I had thought would make my husband forgive me. I had applied for a job at his company. He didn't know I had done that, and the people at the office knew he was married but didn't know he was married to me. So I had gotten another 9 to 5 with his money. When my husband found out, he was okay with it and happy that I had started working and providing for the family. That in the next 2 years, with our accumulated savings, we could start our family. This was someone who owned the company and paid my salary saying that. But I had decided not to argue. I was happy that my husband was happy and my marriage wasn't on shaky grounds. However, I couldn't cope. I couldn't cope one bit. I needed money for my needs because my husband was still not providing for them. He was even expecting me to be saving up for imaginary kids, LOL. The salary of junior staff in the office was small, and I believe my husband kept the salary low on purpose. Immediately the monthly salary came, it would go to my skincare, makeup, accessories, and the like, and it was all finished up, like I hadn't even been paid for that month. After a while, I couldn't take it anymore, and I met up with my ex. My ex introduced me to a way to save up money and have it doubled. I had never known those types of things existed in this world until I had been informed about it. To start, I scraped up my savings of about $2,000 and gave it to my ex to invest in his thing for me. He returned with $10,000. I was shocked and tried it again. This time I put in the whole $10,000. I mean, it was working, so let me just put in everything, and when I've had enough, I'll stop. That had been the plan. I didn't know how foolish this deal with the devil was going to end up. My ex remitted $15,000 after I invested with him, and I became greedy. I stole my husband's money to invest. He usually kept some in a safe for our children, and I happened to see when he unlocked it one particular day. I took about $15,000 and added it to my $15,000. In my head, that would have given me about $60,000. I would have been rich, enough to last me about a year plus, and I could quit the job in my husband's company. But then my ex had to disappoint me. Should I have been disappointed? I should have seen it coming, shouldn't I? I'd been so blinded by my greed because I thought I could make more. I deceived myself and started the cycle of hot mess I landed myself in. A week after giving my ex the money, I didn't see from him or hear from him. I tried calling, and I was in trouble. I made a big mistake at work. I messed up the numbers, which resulted in a client being angry, which resulted in my husband shouting at me in front of everyone at work, and then it was revealed I was his wife and a good-for-nothing who couldn't even do my job. Then I made another big mistake. With all the stress, I had thought my ex would be at the club he had taken me to a while ago. I really should never be in charge of making decisions because I sucked at them. I went to the club to go and find my ex, and I saw drinks and I decided to indulge. I mean, I was going through a lot. My husband treated me like I was a fool. If he found out I had lost this money, he would kill me. I didn't want to end up dead or worse, divorced. So I had gone to the club and I might have drank more than 2 mojitos because before I could blink, I was on the dance floor moving my body because liquor controlled me more than my brain, and I forgot about looking for my ex who had stolen my money. I saw my husband's single friend, and he was looking at me like I was eye candy, and I decided to experiment on the thoughts in my head. I drank my 4th mojito, and before I knew it, I was exchanging saliva with the 3rd guy at the club. I didn't know how I had even made it home. I just remembered that I had found myself at the front door of my home the following morning at around 4, and I remembered my husband had gone on a business trip. So I thanked whatever was up above for that blessing. Luckily, his mother also wasn't living with us at that time. She had gone back home, and it was just me and my husband, so there was no one who saw me coming back from a club at around 4 in the morning. I let myself in, and all the memories of what I had done floated back into my head. I played it cool for the next couple of weeks. My husband hadn't found out about the club incident, and he hadn't also found out about the missing money. I didn't know how I was going to get back $15,000 to put back in the safe, so I began pawning off my jewelry. All the fine things I had gotten with my daddy's money. I needed to at least replace half of what was missing. Then I would clean about the remaining half. But the money was just too much, and no matter how many things I pawned, it barely reached 1/3 of the money. With my salary that came in at the end of that terror-filled month, I was able to make the money up to 1/3. This was after I had already pawned off all my things. I was broke and still had a huge debt to repay. Then everything became worse. My husband found out about the fact that I had kissed 3 different guys. I had no idea how he found out. One moment I was at home trying to prepare dinner, and he stormed into the house with a picture of me kissing his friend on his phone. I couldn't say anything as I was speechless. What would you have expected me to say? Well, I tried reasoning with him and told him how it was because I had too much to drink. That was why I had kissed his friend. I made the mistake of saying it was only his friend that I kissed, and my husband hated lies. He tore into me the next moment and produced pictures of me kissing 2 other guys. I cried and begged, but he threw me out of the house that evening and told me he was going to get back at me for disgracing me amongst his friends. That night I had slept on the curb, and the next morning my husband threw all my belongings outside and burned them right in front of me. Could you imagine that? How could he be so cruel? I begged, but he didn't answer me. When he was done, he told me if I wasn't at the office to sort out the mess I had created with the client's work, the police would come knocking, and he didn't want to see me in his house by evening. You all, this was how I went to work with yesterday's clothes because my husband had burnt all my things when he knew full well I prized appearance above all else. I went straight to his office when I had managed to gather my pride and enter work, and went straight to his office. This man handed me divorce papers then and there and told me I had to go and meet the client and sort out the mess of the company, and he asked me to get out of his office. I had never been so embarrassed in my life. The snickers from the office people as I left was enough to haunt me to my deathbed, and I wasn't even kidding. I went to the location my husband had given me, and as I entered the building, a group of people rushed me and moved me into an alleyway and gave me the beating of my life. They all had women billed and told me to sign those divorce papers and not to mess with my husband again. He had hired female goons to rough me up, and they had roughed me up so badly that I ended up in the hospital. That was when my husband came to the hospital and watched me sign the papers with my broken hands. A week later, I got out of the hospital on debit, and I asked all my friends for a place to stay, but they had all abandoned me. Apparently, my husband had told them I was cheating on him and had run away with his money. I hadn't even stepped out of the hospital when my husband and a man approached me. He had found out about the missing money, and I either paid him right then and there or get arrested by the police officer for stealing. I didn't have any money to pay him, so I was whisked away to the police station. I had no friends, no money, and no husband. I begged my ex-husband to let me out of there. I could get the money for him, but he wasn't having it. I had stolen from him and cheated on him and brought him nothing but bad luck. I explained I had wanted to double the money, but once again my plea fell on deaf ears. I stayed in the cell for a month. I was about to go mad from why my life was like this and how I had no money. I almost got admitted to the hospital again because I kept on getting texts on how I was supposed to pay my hospital bills and texts from my ex-husband's thugs on how I needed to pay the money I owed. If not, they were going to beat me up again and make sure I'm crippled this time. How was I supposed to pay the money from inside a prison cell? I had no one to bail me out. They were talking about transferring me to a real prison yard when luckily they got through to my long-distance aunt, and she bailed me out and took me with her to her place in England. That was how I escaped my ex-husband's death threat and learnt my lesson.